I've taken all of your burning questions from social media and packed them into one action-packed video. We're diving deep into character placement, into blueprint linking, and the secrets of layered destructions for maximum impact. Ever wanted to destroy just a specific part of your model? I will show you how. Need to optimize your simulations without sacrificing quality? Got you covered. We are mastering force field as well and seamless sequence integration to get your final shot render ready. This tutorial is loaded with pro tips and hidden tricks you do not want to miss. So buckle up and let's break some stuff the right way. Here I am inside Unreal Engine. I've received a lot of questions about tools through social media, Instagram, Reddit, and YouTube. So I made a decision to put this video together and kind of answer all the questions in one project. That's why I came up with this type of idea, put this scene together really quickly. This is by no means perfect, but it's going to work for us in terms of addressing your concerns or questions. So if I play, you may have noticed the character is doing its act, throwing a grenade, then we have destruction, chaos destruction kicks in, and I'm playing everything on level sequencer. So if I were to observe, the first thing is the character is doing its act and comes to full stop. Usually that doesn't happen. So if you bring a character, the character at the end of your sequence will reset and repeats the act. So we are going to address that, how to bring the character into full stop so you stop the loop when you bring the character into your level sequencer. And that's the first thing. The second thing is, you may have noticed that I'm demolishing only half of the building, despite the fact that the whole thing is a geometry collection. That was another question that I got, that how can we sort of have the influence on part of the geometry collection? Well, one typical way of doing it is to turn the rest of your geometry collection into a cluster, give it a high degree of damage threshold. That also does the trick, but the method I used is through forces, and that gives you more flexibility. You are perhaps noticing that the destruction starts from at the bottom and actually eats up into the building. So if I move forward, you can see now I'm sort of eating into the building and I'm moving my way up, and I could have gone all the way to here or perhaps the entire model. And you do that through force fields, and I will show you how to do that. And of course, the on-demand question on social media and YouTube was, well, you didn't show us how to put that on level sequencer. Touché, fair enough. I'm going to show you how to do that in this tutorial. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come up with a clean scene with just the vegetation and the environment, and we are going to place those characters in there. We're going to go through the chaos destruction setup a bit quicker this time. I'm not going to spend too much time on the typical attributes that you already know. My main focus would be on the new topics. And by the end of it, you should have the answer to all of your questions. Obviously, the result might be slightly different. You know that, I know, but rest assured, we're going to go through the whole setup step by step from start to finish. All right, let's go to the next chapter and start fresh. Let's start by importing the character and our act. So I'm using Mixamo here for character. I'm using gas mask character, and for animation, I just searched for grenade, and this grenade throw seems like a good fit. Make necessary adjustments. I honestly didn't change a thing. Go to download, and we are going to download as FBX with skin and download this on disk. Let's go to Unreal Engine and import the character in. I'm going to go to Unreal Engine, right click, import, bring in the character. Make sure you have import animation ticked. Usually with Mixamo characters, there is not much to change. I'm going to go import. That should give us the skeletal mesh, the animation sequence, and the actual skeleton. There you go. So this is the actual skeleton, right? Which we don't need unless you want to make changes to the rig. Then we have the skeletal mesh, the one that you actually add to your level. So I'm going to place the character somewhere here, move it ever so slightly higher in T-pose because there is no animation. And usually with any Mixamo save as FBX, you usually get one of these animation sequence actors for free as well, which you need to add to your character. So once the character is available in your outliner, then you can go to your level sequence, and you can see I already have the camera set up, ready to go. Let's drag and drop or Control A. Right now, there is no animation. I'm going to bring the playhead to frame 0, because if it's right at the middle, the animation starts at the middle. That's why. Bring everything to frame 0, go to animation and select your animation sequence. You should have the animation playing for you. Now wait and see what happens when the sequence finishes. It switches back to the T-pose because there is no animation to play. So let's address that. You need to make 2 steps. The first one is actually you need to select the animation track. You need to right click on it, go to the properties and go when finished, keep state, so it stays put. That's the first step. By the way, feel free to use the details panel to get to the properties a lot faster. A new addition to 5.5. I already have a video on it. The second step is to just write a very tiny blueprint to connect your playhead to the sequencer. Now the second step, you select your level sequencer in the outliner. You go into list of world blueprints available, click on the arrow and select open level blueprint. First step is we need to represent the actor, reference it into the blueprint. And if you press tab, it says create a reference to whatever name your level sequencer has. In my case, LS Chaos. Bring it here, and we just want to play it. That's all. So I'm just going to branch out and type in play, and we play the sequence. Simple as that. Nothing too fancy. Now we use event begin play. And this is an event node that triggers when the game starts or when the actor it belongs to is spawned into the scene. Simple as that. That's all you need. Compile, save, and now if I play, the character is doing its act, and right at the end, when the animation runs out, come to a full stop. All right, easy bit is done. Hopefully there was a thing or two for you guys to use in your projects. Let's go to the next chapter and work on this big guy, this static mesh. We want to start with chaos destruction on this guy, and hopefully Unreal Engine is not going to crash on us. In this chapter, we are going to apply chaos destruction. Before we go into fracture and apply chaos, I'm going to inspect the model first. I'm going to go into modeling, and I am going to go into attributes and inspect. You can see that the density, the poly density is not too bad. It's not low poly by any means, but it's not a high poly model as well. Somehow happy medium. Definitely check for any potential flaws, like missing UVs would be a good one to spot before you turn that into geometry collection. Make sure your model is watertight before you apply fracture to it. I'm going to go into fracture and select the model, and let's create the geometry collection. I'm going to go into chaos folder that I previously made. CG target should do the trick, create geometry collection. And now we have the level 0 appearing in our fracture hierarchy window, meaning that it's all ready to go. I'm going to minimize my level sequencer. We don't need it at the moment. So let's start by applying the first layer of fracture to this model. So I am going to have a look, making sure everything is ready to go. I'm going to go into uniform, the first Voronoi uniform. The default is 2020. I'm going to bump it up to perhaps 200 and 200. Remember, we are going to apply layers of fracture to this. I'm going to scroll down, add a little bit of noise, perhaps amplitude of 10 to give it a good amount of noise here and there. We're getting some artifacts, but don't worry about them. Frequency 0.1, ensuring that we get jagged edges around each bone. And let's go fracture. So far, so good. Let's cancel out and look at our fracture. You can see we have some tiny pieces, some big giant pieces. I want this grenade to land around here, so we definitely want to apply more fracture at the bottom section of this geometry. So we have 520 so far, and we can definitely go further. I'm going to zero out the explode amount. Always keep an eye on the size of each bone, and keep an eye on the number of bones, because it's so easy to run out of memory, and the first indication is, well, Unreal Engine is not going to respond. Simple as that. Okay, let's go for the second round of Voronoi. What I'm going to do, I'm going to select part of this model and fracture it further. So perhaps I'm selecting these guys. You can see they are showing here. And I'm going to go into uniform and let's fracture it further. Perhaps I'm going to go with 30, maybe 50 and 50. Let's see how it looks. Not too bad, should work. Do I need noise? Yes, but not as much. Now, it's worth mentioning that you can actually use internal material here. So I've got this rubber dirt, and for the second pass I perhaps want to use that instead of the default material chunk, just to add a little bit of variety. If you have a very specific internal material in mind, time to pick it there, and let's go fracture and see what number we are going to stumble upon once everything is all done. All right, wasn't too bad. I'm going to select all. So we have 800. We certainly can push it a little bit further. What I'm going to do, I'm going to get a bit creative. I'm going to go into right. I'm going to go into outliner and get rid of some of these guys that I don't need, hiding unnecessary objects. So I clearly see what I'm dealing with. And now I can go into interactive again, only select this portion, and let's fracture that again. Now, I can fracture it as a uniform Voronoi. There is no glass or anything thin, so perhaps radial is not going to be the way to go. Perhaps planar is not the way to go. I'm going to go with custom. And since I'm only selecting this area, perhaps I'm going to go with grid. That would be a good choice. It gives me some divisions to work with. Since the material is grid-like, it can somehow cheat the way that grids are working. So 8 by 8 by 8, 10 by 10 by 10. And that is totally fine. I mean, we don't want to get to the actual brick size level, because then that requires to be bumped up to 100, and certainly Unreal Engine is not going to take it mildly, let's put it this way. So let's go fracture again. All done, and now you can see the third level, all of a sudden we're bumping to 2000 only on one level. So if I go all, now we're up to 3000. Gotta be very careful with that one. Okay, I'm going to switch back to perspective. I'm going to perhaps bring the bits and pieces that I hit. Oh well, do you think we can push it to the fourth level? Let's give it a try. I'm going to go into interactive again for selection and only select this bit. Unreal Engine, we want you to work with us one last round. I'm going to go into uniform. Yeah, only this bit should do. I'm not going to get greedy this time. I'm going to switch to another material, perhaps brick red stone for these pieces, and let's lower this to something like 10 and 10 and fracture. All right, all done. We're at level 4, introduced another 457 additional bones. Let's really quickly look at how many bones we have. So if I go all level, 3462. Now I am going to use tiny geometry just to optimize some of these sections, and I am going to merge a couple of these big chunks. I'm sure it's going to help a lot. So with everything selected in my fracture hierarchy, I'm gonna run tiny geo. Let's inspect. If I increase the relative volume to 0.2, we're targeting bigger pieces, perhaps 0.015 should do the trick. And keep an eye on this number, 3462. I'm going to go merge and go select all. And now we're down to 2634. So almost 1,000 bones were merged. That's perfect. Also, I'm going to go into select interactive again and just select this bit, because we really don't want to fracture this part right here. So I'm just going to select that, and I am going to merge them through edit, geo merge. Perfect. Selecting all, and almost 100 bones were merged through our last operation. That really should do it. So let's go ahead and inspect this one more time. So 500, which is now reduced to 300, all the big chunks in my level 1. Level 2, we're working with 244, not too bad. Level 3, almost 1500, 1600. And level 4, these bits coming out as well. Yeah, that definitely should work for us. Okay, all I need to do is just to readjust the damage threshold. So in the details, I am going to select all. We really need to think about what exactly we want to do. Perhaps I'm going to introduce 3 and 4. For 3 and 4, we're going to bring that to a very low number. For our index 2, we are going to go 500, and for indexed 1, perhaps 5,000 or 50,000 is not a bad number. I'm going to reduce index 1 to a slightly lower value. Okay, we're just experimenting. I'm not sure if that's the right number. I honestly don't remember any of these values that I used, but we're about to find out really soon. Let's go to the next chapter and introduce force fields. Time to bring force field and add that to our chaos destruction setup. In between recordings, I realized that Unreal Engine is getting really heavy and slow. So what I did, I leveled up my very last level, level 4 to level 3. I already explained all of this in my Chaos Introduction series, and I ran another round of tiny geometry just to get enough performance boost to be able to continue. Always keep an eye on the performance. If your computer is unable to handle that level of calculation, do something about it. Also, if you have vegetations or props around your geometry collection with chaos destruction applied, make sure there is no overlap. So I strategically placed this building right in the middle of these trees with no intersection. If there is an intersection, your geometry collection will explode as soon as you hit simulate. So I'm going to hit simulate, and you can see it stays put. So always keep an eye on those small bits and pieces before you dive deep into the whole setup. Now, because I want to introduce force fields, I feel way more comfortable to switch from frames to seconds, because in force field, all the attributes like delay is in seconds. So I feel way more comfortable seeing my timeline on level sequencer in seconds so I can make the right decision. All right, with that said, let's bring in our master. I'm going to type in FS and get to my master force field. Again, I explained what master force field does. I will create a complementary tutorial to go over all the fields, but this one has got the most amount of controls, and there's a big overlap between this guy and, let's say, the bomb field. So let's bring that in really quick. I feel like it's a bit too small, so let's put just one number here just to make sure that we have enough to just demolish part of our building. We don't want to include the entire geometry collection in there. We just want to partially have that overlap. Now, this field is one of these fields that you get a lot of attributes. It can be really overwhelming. So let's go very systematic, step by step, and see how we can tweak these attributes. Well, the best starting point is to actually go in there and hit simulate. All right, not too bad. A decent result right at the beginning, but of course, you can see that the entire building is falling apart, and that's really not what I want. Also, you're noticing that it starts from frame 0. I want this guy to throw the grenade, so I want him to throw the grenade, and boom, around that time. So 6.5 mark is what I want for my delay amount. Because I know that, I'm just going to put that in, and we can tweak that later. By the way, if you have other type of shapes, you can do box, you can do plane, but for now sphere is going to work for me because I'm actually hoping to get some radial velocity out of this sphere. So that works for me just fine. I'm going to hit simulate. You can see it's not going to move, and it's moving now. I keyframed the camera. So if I go into simulate, you're going to notice that camera shake, which I added manually. Also, from the look of it, I need more directional magnitude towards this x-axis, which at the moment I don't get. It kind of explodes, and there is not much force velocity in these pieces. So perhaps that would be the first course of action in here. I'm going to scroll down and use directional vector as the first starting point. Now, I know for a fact that 1200 is a lot, but just to be safe, let's visit and have a look. By the way, the directional was pointing up, which is not what I want. Perhaps I want an x-axis. So let's fix that as well. I'm just going to bring that to minus 90 in x, and let's have a look. Yeah, either here or here, they both will get the job done. Perhaps minus 45 in z is going to give me that direction. Let's have a look. Yeah, that gives me a better silhouette. Let's have a look and see what we're getting. 5, 6, and yeah, that definitely gives me a far better silhouette, but those big chunks are throwing out really far. It means that our directional magnitude is super high. I'm going to cut down in half, maybe less than half. Let's go with 500 and simulate. And as you can see, working with force field is all about trial and error, and that should do the trick for now. I don't want to play around with it too much. We can always tweak that value. Let's get to the part where I don't want the whole thing to crumble down. Let's talk about what we can do to make that happen. Well, basically, you need to do two things. You need to change this object into kinematic. Right now, this object is set to dynamic, so the whole geometry collection is going to react to any type of collision or force field. We don't want that. So I'm going to scroll down. It should be under chaos physics. Under general, we've got object type set to dynamic. I want to set this to kinematic. Sleeping is going to completely turn off any type of collision, movement, velocity. Kinematic is going to resist against force fields. Anything to do with gravity or velocity is going to resist that. So technically speaking, I should not be getting any movement whatsoever as soon as I simulate. Let's have a look. Yeah, it's not moving, which is perfect. You may say, Reza, why we're doing this? Well, because now I can go to my force field, I can go to my master field, and there is a section where you can say, only make whatever is inside this force field dynamic. So under force dynamic switching, I can say force dynamic switching on. Whatever is inside this force field is going to turn dynamic. The rest of them are kinematic. This is extremely powerful. So let's go and simulate and see if that overlapping portion is going to move. That is exactly right. So as you can see, we managed to only partially have an impact on the geometry collection. Now, with that out of the way, let's go to the next chapter and tweak this chaos destruction system a bit further and get ready to put everything into our timeline. Now in this section, we learn how to animate our master field, and we are going to introduce lifespan. So right now, it's kind of working to our taste. What I want to do is I want to gradually include more layers, as if we're having a gradual destruction moving up. So that's something that can be done using master field on the level sequencer. So I'm just going to drag and drop master field, and I'm going to reveal its transform track to get to its transform. And let's move to perhaps 120. And I'm going to click on the transform. I'm going to go all the way to perhaps 360. That's where I want the movement of the force field to stop. I'm going to move it ever so slightly, and I'm also going to increase it just a tad, just to include more pieces, maybe 6.5. I don't want to get too close to this wall, because if I get too close, technically it should all crumble down. So I want to stay in the realistic realm still. Let's check that against our sequencer curve. I just want to make sure that all of these guys are working properly. I'm going to go in here, X, Y, and Z. Well, this is really plateau, very uniform. So I think I should be able to break the tangent, add a bit of acceleration here, and select the end one, go to weighted tangent, and intensify my deceleration at the end, or ease out. I can do the same thing with scale. So let's select, break the tangents, select the right tangent, left click drag to accelerate. I'm going to remove ease in and select the end frame, right click, tangent, weighted, and left click, push it out to intensify. So what it does, it's going to be really immediate and then gradually comes to a full stop. And anything in the middle will be included in the force field. But surprisingly, that is not going to do the trick for all. We need to make one more step. And let's have another look. Yeah, that's a lot better. But you may have noticed that these pieces are really not moving. Despite the fact that we did increase this, we still don't see the result. I'm going to go to scale and perhaps add a little bit more, 6.8. And let's apply a keyframe to that. I'm just going to check scale to see if everything is exactly the same. And in the meantime, I'm going to increase my delay amount to 5.5 and increase my radial magnitude to 290. Okay, so there is another element that you guys need to turn on, and that is, if I scroll down right underneath the dynamic switch, is the lifespan. So how much time you want to give this process of eating into the geometry collection. So I'm going to enable that, give it a starting point like 1.2, and let's re-simulate. Let's simulate again. Now, I need more time for this to go up. 1.2 is not enough, so I'm going to almost double that. And let's resimulate. Did I change it actually? Nope. I was simulating when I changed it. Something else to be mindful of. Let's go to 3.1. I'm really pushing it, but I'm hoping to get the result. Now let's look at this line. Let's see if that goes up. Boom. And it's going up to the point that we adjusted. So as you can see, it's a kind of gradual destruction, and I'm fairly happy with the result. Let's do it one more time. Boom. And then it moves up. That's great. So based on the look that you want, obviously you need to go back and change a few of these attributes until you're happy with it. But let's call it a day. I mean, I realistically can spend a day on it to make it look perfect, but as long as I send a message and introduce those attributes to you, that should tick all the boxes. Let's go to the final chapter and bring in all the bits and pieces that I've already prepared to add a little bit more to what we have, and eventually bring our chaos destruction to the timeline. Because if I look at the timeline, I have everything, but our chaos destruction is not working. So let's address that in the final chapter. Now it's time to cache our geometry collection and bring our chaos destruction on to our level sequencer. So to do that, we need to select our geometry collection via the outliner. I'm going to go into actor and we go into chaos and we're going to go with create cache manager. Let's save that into our chaos folder and I'm going to call that chaos cache manager. And I'm going to save. This will get added to our outliner, as you can see, and we have access to its properties. With that out of the way and the cache mode set to record, I'm going to go and simulate my level. So let's go simulate, and we are going to record our chaos destruction like so, and we are going to wait until it's all finished, and I'm going to stop. Now with that done, I'm going to immediately go to cache mode and set the mode to static pose. So it's not going to make any additional recording. Also, it would be a good idea not to set your timeline to loop. Now with that out of the way, I'm ready to bring that into our timeline, and it's now time to bring in a start frame track into the mix. Before I start with start frame, we need to talk about why we use Cache Manager and why this is important. There are mainly three reasons to that. The first reason is to make sure we have consistent behavior every time the scene is played. Without the Cache Manager, every time I run the simulation, I get a slightly different variation compared to the last time until you cache it or you bake the animation. The second reason is to prevent having real-time physics calculation. Every time you run it, you're basically optimizing the performance. And the third one is it allows you to scrub and replay destruction sequence anytime you want, and you can somehow benefit from it and observe the result clearly. So I'm going to go to the start frame, and I perhaps go to frame 70, and I put a start frame of 5. I'm going to apply keyframe, and I'm going to go all the way to the end and put something like 10. You got to play around with these values. The higher the value, the faster the simulation is going to be played. So this time, because we've already cached, let's actually play the simulation through the timeline. I'm not going to go to simulate. So let's press play. And you can see the simulation is taking place. Again, if you want this to happen faster or slower, you can totally change these values. For example, if I go to 100, definitely not a good result, but I just want to show you for the sake of demonstration. Let's do that again. You can see how fast this happens. So this is something that you kind of need to play around with and see what value works for you. For me, something around 5 to 10 worked really well. So I'm going to bring this one back to 10. And I feel like the destruction happened just a little bit sooner than I thought. So I am going to sort of push that around here. And that's better. So let's play again. And throw. Yeah, that's a lot better. You can play around with the, with how artistic you want to get on this. For example, I put a point light in here and I keyframed the intensity. I can go affect world. I already put that into my timeline, and as you can see, I keyframed the intensity and play again. Something like that. I mean, it's not amazing, but it's adding to the personality of the scene. And you basically take it from there. You can totally go ahead and adjust your lighting setup. For example, I can go into lighting, I can turn off HDRI backdrop. I can go and lower my directional light to something like 0.2, make it some sort of a blue color, something like that. I have some sort of a backlight that I can now enable, make it red, and come up with some artistic decisions here to make the result more interesting. I can work on the actual grenade, which at the moment doesn't exist. But you can see that gradually but surely you can add to the value of the scene and really polish it, take it to the next level. I try to actually bring in as many tips and tricks as I could in this particular tutorial to answer all of the questions that I received in one go. If there is any other question, please send me via Patreon or YouTube or Instagram or Reddit, and I'm happy to go through them. I usually get to all of the messages, so if there's any delay, a couple of days, hopefully you guys are gonna forgive me. But apart from that, that really should do it. And I truly hope you all found this video and this tutorial useful. Again, thank you so much for your support. Until the next video, see you guys later.